Wreckers, if you are a patron of Wrecked Radio, you are no stranger to good music reviews on good music, if I do say so myself. I'm Jess Paul, and if you've been with me since the near beginning, you might remember me getting caught up in the hype that is Twilight. The truth is, I have always found the Twi culture so unavoidable. I'd never call myself a fan, but diehards and doubters were made of some of my closest friends and families, and eventually I felt forced to take part in both criticizing and defending the trend. But one thing that I cannot deny about Stephenie Meyer's fantastical franchise filled with fairy vampires and questionable performances, and questionable plot lines, and questionable director choices, is that the music is a separate, redeemable quality that Twilight possesses. In this Wrecked review, I'm going to go over the history and impact that the Twilight Saga soundtracks by themselves made on the movie and music community. To begin, the first Twilight soundtrack opened our eyes and our ears to more simply author Stephenie Meyer's all-inspiring writing playlist featuring already distinguished rock vets like Muse and Linkin Park, but also adding fire to quickly rising acts like Paramore and shining a light on dark coffee house favorites like Iron and Wine and Blue Foundation, introducing modern folk and experimental indie rock to the mainstream. As Meyer claimed that bands like Muse and Paramore had inspired her and her writing, in return, Paramore also stated that they were fans of the Twilight series and wrote the song that would eventually become one of the biggest hits and most memorable songs of the Twilight soundtrack series, Decode. It is now that some more attentive 13-year-old vamp fans are starting to stack collective soul albums next to their Justin Bieber albums. In what other world, am I right? But besides folk radio favorites, the album also showcased an alternative side to Mr. Edward Cullen himself, as Robert Pattinson landed a place in a pivotal point in the movie's climax with a short folk tune called I Will Sign. You would have never guessed. But showing off actors' alternative talents would be repeated again in Breaking Dawn Part 2, as Nikki Reed, the movie's Rosalie, would collab on a piano ballad called All I've Ever Needed with Paul McDonald. As the movies charged on with New Moon gaining bigger momentum and hype, so did their soundtracks. And the trend of obscure indie folk rock tracks on the album became even more prevalent. Rising artists on the scene like Editors and Grizzly Bear got their shot on the soundtrack, while established and/or legendary artists like Mr. Tom York of Radiohead and The Killers wrote and recorded songs exclusively for New Moon, reflecting themes and mood for the film. Memorable gems like Lykke Lee's Possibility and Anya Marina's Satellite Hearts not only served as scene enhancers, but soon became favorites among music fans. What? Am I speaking for myself? But all this Twi talk cannot go without mentioning a one Miss Alexandra Patsivas. Since the late 90s, Patsivas has been deemed by some as a pioneer for music marketing, when she explored a new avenue of promotion that previous generations of music marketers had not yet ventured: television. Pats may possibly even be responsible for introducing some of you to now-known artists, having supervised the background music for shows like Roswell, Chuck, The OC, and Gossip Girl. And apart from the small screen, Patsivas has also supervised for films such as John Tucker Must Die and all 5 Twilight films. So instead of bands like, let's say Band of Skulls, trying to slowly break out through local radio and playing in smoky bars, the nation gets to quickly sample their music through Mustang commercials and, oh yeah, the New Moon soundtrack. The Eclipse soundtrack pulled in another round of alternative favorites like the Black Keys with their Chop and Change, and Florence and the Machine donating her harrowing anthem, Heavy in Your Arms. And like Paramore's Decode in Twi soundtrack number 1, a new female-fronted band, this time from Toronto, called Metric, took charge in recording the movie's title theme, Eclipse, All Yours. As Bella transitioned into the new world of Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2, so did we. A slew of new names to the soundtracks like Cider Sky, Sleeping at Last, and The Joy Formidable were downloaded onto the casual pop radio connoisseur's laptop. The extravagant Vampire Wedding was accompanied by another breathtaking playlist of commendable writing and sound. Rising artist Christina Perri headed the soundtrack for both parts of the final book, with the song that ushers every girl's romantic wet dream, 1,000 Years. I'm not gonna deny it. I cried at the wedding, after I stopped watching Kristen Stewart almost puke herself at the sight of our Pats. Seriously, what is wrong with that girl? For Part 2, Feist, James Vincent McMorrow, Reeves Carney, and Passion Pit joined the cool club of Twilight soundtrack features. And this soundtrack actually presents the first weird call that I can negatively judge for these soundtracks, Green Day, as the end credit accompaniment. To me, it was unprecedented, but also unfitting. But the punk band was all for it, saying, when we were asked to be part of the Breaking Dawn Part 2 soundtrack, we readily agreed because the films are an insane cultural phenomenon. We have always been impressed with the way the Twilight soundtracks are so carefully curated. It halfly sounds like a desperate plea for relevancy, Durnt, to which I do not approve. But besides that, I do agree with the bassist. The Twilight Saga soundtracks were not only a commendable and treasured collection of masterfully crafted and memorable songs, but an unprecedented spotlight for deserved and respectable artists. For me personally, Twilight was a family event. My mom, brother, sister, and I would all go regardless of whether part of us went to enjoy the beloved culture or attend the theater, ironically, to make fun of Kristen Stewart's Twitch. But ultimately, I enjoyed the entertainment that the Twilight series provided. No matter how hopelessly romantic and unfounded, I believe the impact that the music made may even live up to the impact Meyer made on anyone who ever planned to name their baby Edward. Sorry, parents. Have a great week, guys. Peace, love, rock and roll.